Hey guys, Thomas Cecily Jr. here, aka Mustache Tom, and I'm here to review Flora and Ulysses. It has been a long time since I've done a movie review, so I do apologize for that, but I am back with it. Uh, so this came out on Disney Plus. I decided to check it out. Uh, Apparently, after doing a quick Google search, it's based off of a book. I've not seen the book, but we are here to talk about the movie exclusively. So, with that being said, if you end up enjoying this movie review, please consider joining my Patreon page. Any donations are desperately needed, and I'll remind you at the end of the review. Alrighty. Oh, also make sure to subscribe if you end up enjoying this review. That also helps a lot. And, doing all the other stuff. Anyway, so, this is a Disney Plus movie. This review will have all the spoilers, as I typically tend to do anyway. So, yes, just to get that out there. Anyway, so the movie begins with some narration from our protagonist, Flora, who talks about superhero comics like Silver Surfer and Wolverine in particular. This is a fascinating start. This is a clear or odd flex, I'm not sure which, of Disney clearly owning, Marvel. Uh, so yeah, that's a thing now. Uh, so, anyways, her father also is in the business of creating superheroes, or was anyway. And as she's narrating about this, she's talking about that particular superhero named Incandicio. So, meanwhile, she's making her way to this comic book store and getting ready to sell all of her comic books for some reason. I'm actually not sure why. But she wants to make sure she keeps the Incandiso one that her father made. So, uh, as she's trying to go about doing some business and getting quite a few monies, we see that she bumbles her way back into some hijinks, and the owner of the shop offers her a much lower fee of only $30. But she probably could have had more if she didn't do that. Anyway, uh, the narration also tells us that she is a cynic, someone who, you know, is more negative than positive in life, I suppose, which is an interesting trait to put upon youth, I suppose. Uh, and it also kind of mocks a little bit as well as the comic books, but not too much. It's not like, it's not saying like, oh, comic books are for children. It's not, it's Patrick Williams bad. It's not that obvious bad that they're saying in this movie, but anyway. So she goes to her mom, who the dad and her are separated, and she is talking about, speaking of comic books, she's like, oh, books are better, which, that's her point of view, so whatever. Uh, and she herself, the mom, is a romance novelist, and the dad is like separated and at work and has a dead end job at stocking things at a store, which I know the pain and suffering of personally. But as she's going about normal life, suddenly a little robot, a little vacuum cleaning robot, is outside causing havoc from the next door neighbor. So Flora heads outside to try to help stop it. However, before she can do so, the vacuum cleaner that is updating apparently sucks in a random raccoon. Or, sorry, squirrel. I wrote, it's a squirrel in the poster. Why did I say raccoon? I put it in my notes, raccoon. I apologize. Jesus Christ. Anyway, so she pulls it out of the vacuum cleaner thing and attempts to bring it back to life, and does so properly. After seeing some sending thing called Ulysses, she decides to name the squirrel Ulysses, or I'll say Yule for short, just to keep things going. So anyways, she starts to talk more about her dad through this backstory-styled comic book, and how the struggle was real, and how the dad had to leave, or decided to leave, and we cut back to her visiting her dad, so they're still on good terms, all things considered. But his manager says that there needs to be some more work to be done. Meanwhile, Yule is playing with one of those time ball things that go back and forth and gets nearly knocked out by it. But it's doing a little bit more of things that seem slightly smarter. It's implying that things are happening. And as she's checking out Flora, when she returns home, she's checking out her superhero comics that she still has. She still apparently has a lot of them with Yule, and she's like, okay. Meanwhile, Yule, being super hungry as a squirrel, is trying to get food and does like this super kick thing, and she's like, what? And at night, once again, uses its powers to dodge out of the trouble of a small object, but still, it's to indicate to us, the audience, that clearly that this squirrel has unique powers. And Flora, as she is narrating once again, goes over this mantra that she has of don't just hope, observe. And that's her catchphrase as a cynic, apparently. And I do like how they tie that into the end. I'll say that now. So we'll get there. Anyways, so Yule is clearly trying to fly and kind of gliding a little bit, getting closer to that flight power, but not quite there yet. So the neighbor comes over again and introduces a young boy. Unfortunately, I did not catch his name, but in this boy is temporarily blind, apparently. Now, I was not aware of this, that, well, at least in this story, the boy is blind because of a traumatic experience. Now, I did not know that that was even possible. Apparently this is a thing. I'm not sure. I didn't have time to look it up, but for the sake of it, I'll just say it does also kind of play into the superhero thing as well, because his abilities to hear are incredibly enhanced, and he kind of perceives things a little bit like Daredevil, if I were to make a comparison. Anyway, so the mom sees Yule and she freaks out a bit, seeing, the squirrel roam around. And the blind boy joins Flora. and her journey. So meanwhile, the dad comes to visit and says that, how superheroes used to be and the narration is all like, superheroes are all about the whole magical nature, about how, how they're fantastical. And she's talking about, because it's her narrating this, and how their world, their family world, used to also be very magical because they were together, they were happy, and now things are not that way. So everyone's hungry as we cut back to our current timeline and not narration, so they go to a donut joint. And as they are to do so, Yule gets discovered but is too hungry, so he's using more of his powers, but he's using it for selfish reasons because hunger is his weakness. So he causes a lot more havoc there at the store, and of course the people there are freaking out. And as it lands outside, crashing through the window, it does the classic superhero landing that we've seen now so many times that if you know the phrase superhero landing, you probably already know what I'm referring to. So anyways, the family leaves, and I do think that by the end of the movie that is a weakness of the movie, that they don't really do anything with the whole donut shop that they kind of, messed up. I don't like how they just kind of leave it like, oh, whatever, it's more comedy. I don't like that. I think that they could have done a little something there at the end because, they could have tied it in. And I'll explain what I mean when I get to the end. Anyway. So, as they make their way back home, they try to avoid this crazed cat that the neighbor has, and they manage to scurry their way inside. So the cops arrive, and one of the cops happens to be a squirrel capturing master, quote unquote. And he says he wants to help the woman there who owns the shop. Anyways, the dad says that he's gonna try to help, now understanding the situation fully. And as they cut away to more montage and more of Flora exploring how hope is entering back into their lives, we see a montage of the dad dancing around the store he works at night alone, and Flora creating a little sign for Ulysses so that he can have his own little tree hut and come to her when she calls. Meanwhile, the cop is on the case. Takes out some guns, tranquilizer guns, but, he's the antagonist for all intents and purposes. Meanwhile, the blind boy, I'll just call him that because I honestly don't remember his name, gives Flora this little book about something. I don't remember what it was. And Flora's like, oh, thanks, and gives Ulysses a Pop-Tart. But as that's happening, the boy stumbles into a weak part of the structure and falls through, and Ulysses, using its now found super strength, catches him, but that Pop-Tart is also falling, so the squirrel, Ulysses, chooses the Pop-Tart over the boy. So clearly, again, that weakness being doubly picked here. So, the kids are seeing the news after the fact, after they work their way back inside, and see that Ulysses is under watchful eye, that they're trying to capture him, so the kids are like, oh no. So, meanwhile, the father is working or, doing his thing, he made a whole little, like, art piece. And during the day, like, the manager's, like, all saying how he's gonna take pay out of the father's work. But the manager's boss, like the manager's manager, I guess I'll say, I was like, huh, the business is, like, booming all of a sudden even more. Like, people are into this. Like, yo, get this guy. And the manager's like, hey, man, we need you to work. But while that's going on, the kids come to get the father's help. So the father decides to quit his job there. So that manager also gets fired after the fact. And thus, the mom is in trouble at home trying to figure out what to do, what to write. And the cop finds their car, so he's closing in on them and talks to the father when he arrives. But the father creates enough of the distraction for Flora to escape with the Ulysses and the boy. However, the cop is attacked by that wild cat, and Cap manages to capture the cat, so he manages to bring him in. So the cop, after successfully doing his job, I guess, so I guess he's more of an animal control person than a cop, fires a tranquilizer gun at the dad and hits him in the leg, because he sees the squirrel there, Ulysses, so he's trying to capture the squirrel as well. But Ulysses saves them later on instead. So the family is reunited for the most part. And Ulysses, who is outside when they return home, crashes the party. And the mom begins to write again, feeling this newfound energy. And this interviewer, who she was mentioning throughout the story earlier on, which I neglected to mention here, but I'm mentioning it now, is, she's trying to make sure that this interview will go out without a hitch. So the interviewer reads this poem after, like, getting a little bit of, I don't know about this sort of vibes look to her. But she reads the poem and she's like, nope, I'm out. And thus we get some more narration than Flora, who pretty much says that there are these three degrees of things that you hate to see, in order of, it's good to see hope, but what's worse than seeing hope is seeing no hope. But what's worse than seeing that is someone who once had hope lose hope. And, she narrates something along those lines. Anyways, the mom sort of goes off into the woods and sees Ulysses and decides to try to get rid of him. Meanwhile, this doctor that the father has been talking to very briefly in the movie talks about this old war and about looking back and going back and just turning back to the people and seeing them, because you know that they're there when you do that. And this gives the inspiration for the father to, once again, because he was, this is the low point of the movie, and it is trying to get back up. So the mom is, like, crying in the woods and see what Ulysses wrote and, like, goes, huh. She finally realizes at this point the true kindness that Ulysses is trying to offer, as well as offering food too. So anyways, the kids find shelter in the rain as it's beginning to storm out, and the blind boy, talks about how his father passed away and how this new guy came into his life and didn't even treat him well. Even though it wasn't the worst case scenario, it was just like a naming him, I guess, is the worst of it. But after the rain dies down, the family reunites once again. And Flora narrates how, or the mother says how, the magic of this world is found through the kid. And how that was her successful thing that she did, so she's finally seeing that now as well. However, the cop isn't done, as he manages to shoot and capture Ulysses. Bring him away. So the family makes their plan to get him back, and the doctor that the father talked to helps them bring them to the location. As they are making their way through, and as Flora is treating the blind boy with kindness, and throughout the movie, he gets his vision back. So yeah, they're a neat little package throughout the movie. And the family gets chased, and they have a little scene where they unrelease all the animals, and they send Ulysses through one of these tube things from one side to the other, and recapturing him. And because all the animals are free, the wildcat the cop captured is also once again free, and once again attacks the cop. Ulysses once again saves the father when they are outside, because the chase transitions to outside. The cop manages to break free of the cat, shoot the father with more tranq bullets. The father is at the edge of the building, losing his limb movement. He falls off. Ulysses jumps up, flies, saves him, floats back down. And thus, Ulysses and Flora go out into the woods with the rest of the family, and Flora decides that in order to keep on with the superhero tradition, to let him go so that he can save people at his own whim. And at the end, she narrates how you have to observe. She says that statement of be cynical and observe. Because once you observe, ... you actually start to see how truly powerful or how beautiful worlds can be. And once you reach that point, you don't have to be as cynical anymore. And that is the little ending catchphrase of the movie. It does a little comic book style here again at the end, of how, and we see Ulysses go off and fly off back into the town, probably to save more people. And that is the end of Flora and Ulysses. Oh, and I should mention how the family, to get back to being stable, because I was very worried that they weren't going to do anything with this. The father quitting his job, and we have stories like this, by the way, where father is overworked, quits job, but doesn't get a new job after the fact, of but I need to spend time with family. But there has to be some sort of, there has to be something, right? So they actually answered that beat by having the family work together and sell the comic Flora, or Ulysses. They call the comic Ulysses, and it's selling really well. So father has a new job. And I actually really, really like that. I like that there's compromise. I hate the message of you're overworking, so just quit your job. It's not that easy. There has to be some sort of compromise, and I do like the fact that this movie says, hey, there's some compromise. Yeah, the father's still going to work, but he's just going to have a job in the thing he used to love before. That's a good answer. However, as I mentioned earlier on, I do think that they should have had a little beat at the end of the movie where they used some of the money that they gained from the comic book to help rebuild the donut shop. To be like, hey, we kind of screwed up there, let us repay what the damage we done. Even though that was more Ulysses' fault, but still, they were pretty much the owners of Ulysses, pretty much, so I think there should have been a beat there where they took responsibility for Ulysses' action and did that little thing. They did not, so I do feel like that's a little bit of a tick against the movie in terms of, like, finalizing that bit. There's also a little comic or comedy bit at the end where the cop is dating the woman that owned the store, but she also happens to be the owner of the cat that attacked him throughout the movie, so that's a big nope. And thus, that is the end of Flora and Ulysses. I wanted to make sure I got everything. So I think I would give this movie a 6 out of 10. It's actually pretty good, all things considered. Yeah, and I'm a little bit surprised by it. The acting is decent, I would say. People tend to say that child actors aren't that good. She does her job decently. There was definitely an emotional moment that seemed a little off, like a snare off. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, obviously. And the boy was decent too. So yeah, pretty good on that part. The story, it's pretty good. Dealing with the narration and having her explain how things as they are happening through montages and things like that. Progressing the powers in a way that we're seeing visually happen earlier on. Things like that. And again, I think there are more comedy-esque bits in this movie, like hijinks are ensuing, haha, so it does lean a little bit closer to a younger audience in that way. I do feel like the message can apply to anyone, obviously. I do like the fact that they never say at any point in the movie that comic books are just for kids. They have the dad, re-explore his optimism in that little montage where he's like pretending to fly around and stuff. I actually like that more. Because comic books can be and should be for anyone. That has been my belief since the very beginning. And that there is no difference, even if it is a superhero, even if it is something a bit more magical or, supernatural or whatever word you want to use, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's just for kids. That, when we are down on ourselves, when we are at our low points, that we can, even as adults, look to these things and say, there can be hope out there. Yeah, it's expressed in a more, over-the-top way, but that's what I need right now. And I actually enjoy when people take that outlook on this material, that it can be for anyone, and that it should be for anybody. So yeah, pretty good stuff. And that is my review for Flora and Ulysses. And again, if you ended up enjoying this review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my Discord server. The second one will head you over to my Patreon page. Any donations are desperately needed. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.